Alright, let's change the angle here. Hi everyone, this is Mike, and this is the view from our hotel that we're staying at right now. The hurricane destroyed our home, unfortunately, but the hotel that we're staying at least for the time being, has a really nice view of this lake here. And I figured I'll do my next video, my topic that I want to talk about. Instead of showing me, I'm just going to let you guys look at this awesome view here while I talk about today's subject. And what I wanted to talk about today is not video game related. It's actually going to be about blocks. In particular, blocks from TV shows, like TV show blocks. Certain blocks that have lineup of shows that are grouped together. They don't really exist anymore for the most part because of the internet, but there are a couple which I will get to. But let me name some of the blocks that I remember that I'm fond of. One is TGIF. TGIF was a block on ABC that featured sitcoms, and at first it was your standard adult sitcoms, but then the demographic got younger, and as it got younger, it got more successful, and basically it eventually became a block of family sitcoms, primarily targeted to adolescent teens at the time, and that was one of my favorites. Another, and this was Friday night at ABC, and they had great shows like Full House, Family Matters, Step by Step, Dinosaurs, Boy Meets World. Did I mention them already? I don't know, but great shows like that made me look forward. They were one of the blocks that I look forward to at the end of the school week. It did also, unfortunately, help make me realize what a loser I was in school, because I would see too much of myself and the way that people would treat me back then, because this was during middle school that I was really watching TGIF, with Urkel and other characters like that, other nerdy characters on shows. That was me, I connected, so I'm like, and I felt embarrassed for myself because I wanted to be cool at the time. Well, it wasn't so much that I wanted to be cool, it was more like being cool was a requirement and I failed to live up to it, and it was toxic to hang out with me unless you were bullying me. But yeah, so a lot of what I learned about myself and a lot of how I perceive myself throughout most of my life, TGIF had a bit to do with that. It had a bit to do with my awakening as a loser. So another block I'm going to talk about was SNICK, which was the first primetime block focused on kids, particularly older kids. And it aired on Nickelodeon Saturday night. So Friday night I had TGIF, and then Saturday night there was SNICK. And although I didn't care for Clarissa, I enjoyed Roundhouse, Ren and Stimpy, Are You Afraid of the Dark. Great thing about Are You Afraid of the Dark, at least in the first season, was the endings were unpredictable, because she had happy endings sometimes, and then sometimes she'd have dark endings or scary endings. And so that made the show unpredictable. So you worried about the characters. I think that's the best way to do an anthology series, is to have the endings be unpredictable, where you don't know whether you're going to get a dark or a happy ending. So you really feel for the characters that way. It also had elements that made me feel like a loser because of people getting picked on and stuff. Ren and Stimpy was, honestly, I feel like it was ahead of its time. It came out on a kids network, and it really wasn't meant to be a kids show, but it was the only network they could get on at the time, so it simply was something that had difficulty fitting in. It was a bit too edgy for Nickelodeon, but because it was on Nickelodeon and it couldn't go all the way, it made it hard to classify it as an adult show. So Ren and Stimpy was truly ahead of its time, and did not belong in the time that it came out. And there were other shows that came on later, like All That. Roundhouse, I want to talk about Roundhouse before I get into All That, because there is a connection. Roundhouse, the jokes on Roundhouse and the references were mostly for an older demographic. My mom got more of the jokes on Roundhouse than I did. But All That changed that. All That made the jokes more kid-friendly. So, and plus the cast was younger as well. And so they went with that, and that was much more successful for Nickelodeon. All That had a bunch of characters that people remember, to this day. People don't really remember Roundhouse, although I do, and I still love the show. Both TGIF and SNCC went on for a long time, and their lineup changed, and eventually I stopped watching them because I outgrew the blocks. But I'll never forget the times that I was in the right age demographic that I enjoyed those blocks. Other blocks that people know, another block that was memorable to me was Disney Afternoon. Disney Afternoon was there for me because I couldn't watch Turtles as a kid. Too violent. So I couldn't watch Turtles as a kid. So there was Mario Brothers, Super Show, and there was Disney Afternoon for me. DuckTales was my favorite of the bunch for sure, by far. It had an Indiana Jones feel to it because the ducks went on adventures, and of course the characters are great. I'll never forget this really dark episode where Magica puts a cloud over the house and makes everybody think that their friends hate them. That was truly shocking. First it was just normal scary stuff, but that didn't get to me. But once you would see Scrooge McDuck or Huey, Dewey, and Louie act mean, that was really disturbing at the time when I was a kid and I watched it. So I want to give a shout out to that episode, because dark episodes always stick out to me. Dark episodes of a series. Let's see what else as we continue to look at this beautiful view. Toonami. I want to talk about Toonami, even though I was out of its demographic and I was old enough to watch uncut anime, so I wasn't going to watch censored anime. But when I got into anime, I started looking at Toonami block promos, and I realized just how special that block truly was. Because it's still on. And that's another great thing about it too, I gotta give it credit for. But Toonami did so many, it's probably the best action block ever. And best anime block ever. It's both. It brought anime to a mainstream audience. I'm sure you've all heard that before. It's not only created memorable hosts, it also gave them a story arc. So when it was time, you know how in many blocks the designs change over time, the longer the blocks go on? Well, they actually made stories around it. So not only did the people hosting the block, the characters hosting the block, not only did they have their own stories, but those stories would explain the visual changes that they would make to the block. You know, the design, the robot designs and all of that. There was design to Tom and everything. And of course, Moltar switching to Tom and all of that. The soundtrack for the bumps was incredible. It was drum and bass, it was hip hop, anything breakbeat oriented that's electronic, you would hear a lot. And it was some of the coolest. One of the reasons why the block was so cool was definitely the soundtrack. But also, Peter Cullen, I miss you. I wish you'd go back to making Toonami promos. They're not the same without you. He made Toonami promos so memorable. They were epic, but they were still tongue-in-cheek at the same time. And he was able to do both. And just Peter Cullen is the man. The voice of Optimus Prime is just the bomb. So, and also the cool thing about Toonami is that of all the blocks I've been talking about so far, Toonami is the one that not only, yes, it died out over time like many blocks, but due to popular demand, it was brought back. It was brought back because of fans that grew up with it. And the cool thing about it is, because it's now on Adult Swim, the series was the block was allowed to mature and grow up with its audience. So if you were a kid when you watched Dragon Ball Z after school, you're an adult now, and Tom is like that friend that was been there for you since you were a kid, who's still around today. You know, Toonami, I view Tommy like a friend that you're still friends with, that you met when you were a kid, that you're an adult now and you're still friends with that person today. That's Toonami. And also got to give a shout out to the speeches, the inspirational speeches. They were so wise and so important, I think, for kids to know, because they gave perspective. And that's not something you hear a lot in kids stuff, in television at all today. But there was a real perspective and a sense of maturity in the messages, and encouragement in the messages that you got from Tom. And of course they had those awesome, other promos, music videos that were just cool. Like Advanced Robotics was epic and dark and just totally badass. It's badassery at the finest. And this was when they were for kids. So, also, another block I wanted to mention that I never watched but I want to mention it because it's important to a lot of people, so I have to give it a shout out, is Cartoon Cartoons. Cartoon Cartoons is basically a collection of the comedies, the original programming that was on Cartoon Network at the time. And I didn't watch it because I was too busy watching Invader Zim on Nickelodeon. So yeah, Cartoon Cartoons might have been why Invader Zim flopped. Besides the fact that it was an older audience watching it, but yeah, those are some of the blocks that I remember and I want to give shout outs to. My personal favorite would have to be Snick in its early years because it was so edgy at the time, and I love the fact that it ended with a horror show and it was right before bedtime, so that really took some balls. But I think Toonami is the best. It's the only one that's still around, and it's around because people like it so much, and it did so many innovative things that to this day I think Toonami is the best. It certainly is the best action block of all time, and the best anime block in my opinion. But I think it's the best, but my personal favorite would have to be Snick. And the thing about Toonami is, as great as it did come out after my time. Whereas Snick and TGIF, they came out right on my time. So there you go. I just wanted to give you guys a nice view of the water while talking about television programming blocks and why I miss them and why I wish they would come back, even though I know they don't. What's impressive, that's another thing impressive about Toonami is we live in an era where you can watch any anime you want at any time streaming, and when television blocks have become obsolete, Toonami's still around, still doing its thing. There's an anime block that is so popular, it's existing in an internet era. So yeah, that's all I got. That's all I want to talk about right now. I'll talk to you guys in a future video. So one more shot at the view. Look at the view, guys. Look at the view. Bye, everyone.